Since I've gotten the questions a few times now on how to prestige and roll Single-Minded Fury, if you're not aware, Single-Minded Fury is the core component of one-handed dual-wielding warrior abilities, so our warrior abilities hit twice. Disclaimer, this is not a build guide, this is purely on how to prestige and how to roll Single-Minded Fury. I am most likely going to do a build guide later on, but it's going to be whenever I'm finished with the build, and also most likely whenever chapter 2 is out, so the build guide's hopefully going to be eternal for the rest of the season. So this video is hopefully going to answer best cards and what alternatives to cards, the starter abilities for the build, when to invest in the build, and by that I mean you are probably going to prestige a few times until you hit something decent that you then should or could invest your marks on, and what is a good prestige for it. And also, again, another disclaimer, this is a high roll version. You're gonna need so many one-offs abilities and needing to hit stuff that you cannot simply just card at the start. So previous video I've done on this, there's a playlist down below. If there's unanswered questions, I would highly suggest try to watch or search in any of these videos for the answers that is not mentioned in this video. So there are two versions of Single-Minded Fury. There is the Bloodthirst version, and this is the one I'm going to talk about today. And basically here comes the big one. Bloodthirst go suck and hitting for 50k DPS, 50k damage. And there's also the Execute version. So we are doing the Bloodthirst version, but the Execute version are also mighty fine. And if you pick up the talents and try out Execute, it can do very good damage. My current build is here on the screen if you want to see my progress. Since the last video, I've been gaining around 5k DPS. I think it's purely from battle charge, fancy footwork. I hit battle fatigue, but without Warcry, it's basically useless. So gained a lot of damage in the last video. Let me say, to hit this like 30k DPS, I've spent over 50 hours in Manastorm purely farming scrolls and doing other content, and I've hit the cap now. I'm at 2 million marks on the build, and I'm at this progress. I'm still needing these talents and abilities, so this is a very high roll build, and Warcry and Martial Crescendo I would assume will give me the other 10k DPS and really just push the build. Also quickly gonna upgrade Heroic Strike to Cleave and Felguard to Enslaved Demon so I can get the Doom Guard for the Thunder Souls. And also gonna try roll into the Taste of Blood combo. I saw that in another YouTube video and that seems to do a good damage, so would suggest try that. And as you can see here, this is a build I've taken inspiration from Microplastic. It is not the build I'm playing, it's still the same build, but I've replaced stuff, and I think he did it as well. Like, he doesn't have improved slam anymore. I think he talked about rerolling Dreadnought. Wind Slam is one of the weaker abilities, and Blood Frenzy, if someone else in your raid team has Blood Frenzy, you don't need the talent, so you could replace that. What to card, if you just want the pure screenshot and end of stuff, you can see it here. But let me say, I'm gonna give more explanations on why Dragon Warrior in the next couple of slides. So the reason why to pick the talent for Dragon Warrior, it's not that neat of a have, but just I would strongly suggest either card Dragon Roar as the 5th strongest ability, because this is the single target damage, but for AoE it's just so insane how much damage it does, and it's just so much better to have your core abilities from your start and the ones that change your rotation, so you don't need to learn them later down the line. And that is the reason why I suggest carding and aiming for your prestiges in that way. So to answer a different kind of something new, I guess, why to card. So the reason why we're carding these 4 abilities that I showed, just going to talk about Windfury and the rest you can just see. So if you don't card Windfury, any of these talents that you're gonna pick up, they're basically gonna be useless until you hit Windfury weapon. You could not card Windfury weapon, and Rockbiter weapon or Fell-Infused weapon are gonna be decently fine, but all of these talents you're still gonna be picking up, locking in, but they're gonna be dead until you see Windfury weapon. Same goes for this. Hateful Strike, you can play the build without Hateful Strike, but it just unlocks so many nice talents for the build. Same goes for Titanic Strike. Titanic Strike is just, that is a need to have basically. It removes all the rage restrictions for the build. It gives us combo points for build up first and fancy footwork. Just basically, and we don't need to pick up rage talents. Same goes for all of these. Dragon Roar, as I talked about. I didn't have Battle Charge for a long time, and I basically had 4 of these talents were basically dead because I didn't start a good prestige with Battle Charge. So big regret from my side. Don't do like that. Don't do like me, I mean. So for abilities, the recap, what should you prestige for? These 4 abilities or Dragon Roar, pick, and then try to pick up the lower abilities, the Battle Charge and Warcry. I see them every like 3rd prestige, give or take, so it's not unlikely to roll them, and I tried to roll both, but then I didn't roll anything else. So the safe version, the Titan's Fury, talked about that. Would always card this. I didn't card Overwhelming Rage. Big mistake. I had rage problems and struggled for a long time without this talent because I rolled the 4 out of 4 so much later. Card it out of the way. It's just, it helps. And again, with the rotation stuff, if you card stuff that I need to have that helps with the rotation, is just so much smoother to learn the build from the start. Same goes for Whirl of Rage. It helps you press and learn to press the Whirlwind to proc the Enraged talent, and without this, your Enraged talent are so hard to proc, and it will help you if you roll the Blades of Blood later on. Draconic Slam, no brainer. Slam are instant. Slam bad with cast time. End of that. Dragon Warrior again. It's the closest one to the 6th worst talent, and it's basically only if you really focus to try roll for Dragon Roar. And here again, for the high roll version, is that if you either don't card Overwhelming Rage to try to roll it, or to roll Dragon Warrior, replace them with any of these. Gurubashi Berserker is not as good as I thought because it really requires you somewhat higher for crit to keep the stacks up. So at the start, when you don't have that many crit talents, it's not as good as it is later on. And again, if you for some reason don't have it or don't card it, the Overwhelming Rage, you could be carding 2 out of 4 or 3 out of 4. It would be fine to get started, but you will need to pick up some other rage talent if you don't have this. Tips for when you progress the build. When you're starting out, you should of course be prioritizing the ones from the list, the best in slot talents basically. But any of these talents, if you see them, pick them, save them for as long as possible. They are damage increases, strength, attack power, attack speed. Pick them up, save them. Start abilities, Battle Stance, Charge, Heroic Strike, and Slave Demon. Alternatives, this build is a pain in the somewhere down below to level. So I think for my version I have now, I picked up Storm Strike to have some damage while leveling. So consider that if you struggle with leveling, especially if you're doing a lot of prestiges. The build doesn't get any of the abilities until level 30 or 40, like Bloodthirst and Slam. Whirl of Rage, for this to proc Blood Rage, you don't need Blood Rage, so you don't need to start with Blood Rage. Here's the reasons for the abilities. Gonna mention the Enslaved Demon, rest you can just read or pause. Enslaved Demon, I feel like I rolled more pet talents whenever I had Enslaved Demon, so I didn't card the demon. I was lucky to roll the Felguard, and you could also roll the Tether Elemental if you roll the Elemental talent for it instead. It's basically the same as the Master of Demonologist. Same goes for Heroic Strike and Charge. I feel like when I had Heroic Strike and Charge, I saw Battle Charge and Warrior stuff more often when I prestige. It could be a coincidence, but test it out and see if you feel the same. So to answer the question, when to invest in the build, I did around 10 to 15 prestiges until I had a version I was pleased with. It was, I'm not good at making decisions, but I also really want to get started. So this was the version I choose to go with. And this is the reason why I say to you, really you should try aim for prestige with Battle Charge and Warcry, so you don't end up with dead talents. I didn't have it, and yeah, as you can see, yellow is hit, green are hit, blue is the stuff I carded. The reason why I track it like this, I will link this down below so you can copy it and something similar, is that when I roll a build I really want, I roll for 3 different versions, and I always re-roll the worst one and try to either invest a small amount of marks until I hit the 3000 cap, and this is how I track it. Is the build good, and what is the best build? And here you can see I rolled 4 different 1 out of 1 stuff I was pleased with. I rolled the Dragon Warrior combo, so, and this was the reason, and this is the reason why I also suggest to you now to try to start a roll for the Dragon Roar combo, so you can learn to play with this and get the feeling of pressing the buttons, having the rotation you want to have in the end game, have that from the start to begin with. And this is 9 days later with the same build you saw, and I didn't roll Battle Charge for so many thousands of marks and thousands of rerolls. So I'm having, as you can see here, I'm having dead talents because I didn't roll Battle Charge and I didn't progress and proceed with a prestige without Battle Charge. I would say Battle Charge are probably more important than Warcry if you have to choose. So what to take from this? When should you invest your marks? Prestige until you have at least 2 or 3 of these. Warcry are the least important one, but the talents are dead, useless without Warcry, so something to consider. Talents, there's no right answer. Martial Crescendo is probably one of the better ones, gonna show that later, but try to aim for 2 or 3 1 out of 1 or legendary talents and should be good. And as you can see here, best talent, Martial Crescendo, the attack speed. The too long didn't read. More attack speed, more rage, more auto attacks, better uptime on everything with Titan's Fury. I can really feel it that my attack speed are low, and yeah, I think Martial Crescendo is gonna give me, if I hit it one day, probably gonna give me around 5k DPS. Second good options, Overheated Strike, as you saw in the damage breakdown, or in the last video you can see my damage breakdown. It's so much damage. Battle Fatigue with the Warcry, so much damage, 10%. Hack and Slash, Deep Wounds, also so much of my damage. These talents are the strongest, not 1 out of 1 talents. The recap is Prestige until you hit 2 or 3 of these. Battle Charge, Warcry, Dragon's Roar. When you have a build like this where you need so much min-max and need so much stuff, I think it's a fine investment to go at least 10-15 prestiges and just try fish for it. And also you could card Dragon Roar and maybe just try to high roll for Single-Minded Fury and Titanic Strike. Talents, hit at least 2 or 3 legendaries to card this, but if you're not agreeing with the Dragon Warrior, it is kind of dead talent if you don't hit Dragon Roar. So card either Here Comes the Big One or Gurubashi Berserker. You could also card the build up first if you don't have the Here Comes the Big One. How to grind for the build, and you saw my version. I'm not close to finish with the build yet, so you're gonna do a lot of grinding to get enough scrolls to, if you want to get close to a finished version of this build and to have a copy of what you saw on the screen. The best way, hands down, if you don't do raid logouts, world bosses, is Manastorm. Manastorm, Suck 1 to 51. Try to look for these utilities. It's not a core component of the build, but also since we use Battle Charge, Demonic Leap, Disengage, all of these utilities are very nice for the build, since Battle Charge is a damage ability, so if you want to move during a boss, you will need any of these abilities instead. And also, quick mention, try to grab a speed potion if you're starting out and don't have that many of the utilities. You can buy it for 1 honor token thing from this island in Stranglefall Vale. Hope that helps. Good luck with rolling the build. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments if I forgot anything, and if you found anything helpful in the build, show me by liking the video. And else, thanks a lot for watching, and see you in the next one.